Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has signed 4 executive orders to ease tax burdens on individuals and businesses. Special Advisor to the President on Special Duties, Communications and Strategy, Dele Alake, made this known while addressing newsmen at the State House on Thursday. Alake said the step by the President was aimed at reducing tax burden on Nigerians and also meant to address concerns being raised by manufacturers and other stakeholders regarding recent tax changes. The President has also set up a committee on tax reforms, which aims to remove barriers impeding business growth. According to Dele Alake, the committee, which will be chaired by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, will be made up of experts from both the private and public sectors. They will be responsible for the various aspects of the tax law reform, fiscal policy design and coordination, harmonization of tax and revenue administration. Now, joining us on the morning show this morning to discuss the latest tax reforms by the President is Dr. Ifediora Amobi, renowned economist. Welcome to the morning show, Dr. Ifediora. And good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Ajay.
Well, all right. So the President basically deferred the Finance Act to September 1st, in line with the national tax policy, which provides for, I believe, 90 days before new tax reforms are imposed. Now, how does this time frame benefit manufacturers especially? And do you think that the extension is adequate?
Yes, thank you very much. It is very, very adequate. Manufacturers need need enough time to adjust to any and all new tax laws and new policies that come from the federal government. 90 days in some economies might seem short, but for Nigeria, considering that we had less than that initially, I think it's actually a step in the right direction. And both manufacturers and other businesses will really appreciate the fact that they have enough time to make these adjustments.
All right, Dr. Amobi. I'd like you to put in perspective the 4 executive orders that the President signed into law. A lot of people would say that, yeah, it's in sync with what former President Muhammadu Buhari started. But then the green tax, for example, the removal, the suspension of the excise duty on locally manufactured products, which you have touched on a bit, I would like you to expand further. In what specific ways are you expecting Nigerians to benefit, local manufacturers in particular, and the generality of the people who appear to be already burdened by a number of the policies that the new president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has introduced? You know, of course, that the floating of the naira may not be making manufacturers and importers to smile, particularly. Removal of subsidy on the short run may also be something of a burden to contend with. So when you look at the 4 executive orders and the general import of the tax policies that the President is interested in, what will be your assessment of those orders, and looking at it holistically, how will you think that the President has fared with the steps that he's taking?
Okay, yeah, for the 4 executive orders, at least the first 2 executive orders have to do with date adjustments, which is what we just talked about earlier on. And like I said, those are actually steps in the right direction because time is actually required to make this adjustment. So those ones are actually also in line with the national tax policy's own schedule. So those 2 are quite welcome. The other 2 executive orders, which I split into 4 different suspensions. The first one is the suspension on the 5% tax on petroleum services. Then there's a suspension on excise duties for manufactured goods. And then, of course, the suspension of the green tax on single unit plastics, which I will elaborate on in just a few seconds. And then the fourth one, of course, is suspending the import tax adjustment. So those are very, 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 very good short-term measures that the federal government has actually introduced to Nigeria. On the green tax, as much as Nigeria wants to be environmentally in tune with global trends, I think that suspension is also a good way of encouraging businesses within the plastic sector in particular, whether it's plastic containers, flat sheets, etc., even down to the pure water, all of that. It will go a long way in ensuring that they save a lot and they are also able to ease some of the burdens on their businesses. Considering what we have experienced, and most especially businesses have experienced in the past 6 months with the currency regime, with the foreign exchange changes that have actually occurred at the moment, in which prices have gone up. Everybody is feeling the pinch in Nigeria, whether families as well as the corporate sector. So any tax reduction or suspension, whether it is temporary or whether it is permanent, and I know there's been clamor from various manufacturing bodies, etc., to not only suspend but also scrap some of these taxes. I am not in favor of scrapping taxes because I know that government actually needs that for its revenue. However, given what Nigerians have gone through, most especially in 2023, and what we're even experiencing, and I didn't even mention other ones like the electricity tariff, etc. That is one big burden off the shoulders of both individuals and corporations. And so the green tax, in particular, Nigeria, if we actually look at our pollution to GDP ratio, or just basically where we are compared to other countries in the world, I don't even think the world should even worry about our level of what we actually emit into the atmosphere. If on taxes on products like that is actually good for us, because as much as we are trying to get into exploiting our fossil fuels and so on, we are not in any way going to violate any international laws in that regard. So yes, it is actually well supported, and it has also gotten the green light and the support of the organized private sector and even the CSOs to a large extent. So it is welcome.
Thank you so much for setting the tone of that conversation and really explaining how those taxation policies would work. Well, let's talk about the issue of multiple taxation. It has been a long-standing challenge for businesses in Nigeria. Some would say that the executive orders demonstrate President Tinubu's commitment to reviewing, the complaints about it and creating a business-friendly fiscal policy framework. But in your view, how can the current administration ensure a consultative approach and engage stakeholders effectively to gain their input and address their concerns? And also, how do you anticipate that these changes will impact, in real time, impact businesses and taxpayers in Nigeria?
Well, just slightly over a month old. It's still settling in. Ministers and other appointments haven't been made yet. So by the time that happens, yes, there will be a more structured and formal consultation mechanism in which the federal government will, liaise with various stakeholders to ensure that, that this new tax policy is and, quite timely. On multiple taxes, the manufacturing sector, most especially SMEs, have over the years, as far back as 1999, been clamoring on multiplicity of taxes and how their businesses are affected by that. And it is one of the reasons, besides power and maybe security, that Nigeria is always ranked quite low in the ease of doing business studies that are done periodically. This will actually go a long way in curbing that, and most especially what FIRS is now doing with the Market Traders Association to ensure that they partner with their members to streamline all these excess taxes and all the tax forces and all the various things that that goes on within their businesses at the local government level. It can't be 100% effective at this time because we're just starting, but it is a step in the right direction. It is actually a start. Most of these businesses are going to key into the federal government's agenda and try as much as possible to cut down on all those extra, whether you call them fees or levies or permits, etc., and try and streamline the tax process and the enforcement and collection of it to an extent whereby the federal government gets what is actually due to it in the short to medium term.
You just mentioned, taxing the informal sector and what FIRS is doing in partnership with the Market Traders Association of Nigeria to collect VAT from that sector. We know that it's not a new tax, but, MATAN has not been complying. They have been hounded by touts who have been collecting money from them. I'd love for you to paint a picture. I did a little bit of research. I understand that, more than 90% of the market traders may not pay these VAT because, there is a provision in the law which says that if your annual sales is less than 25 million naira, you don't need, to charge VAT. And if you sell certain items like, medical supplies, educational materials, baby products, fertilizer, you do not need to pay tax, regardless of your turnover. And the few that will pay VAT will be entitled to something called input VAT credit. Now, in this system, you will be paying VAT on your profit margin. Can you shed more light on this? Because there's been a lot of furore with this whole new imposition or partnership.
Thank you, Oji. Like you said, it's not a new tax. It's actually been in place. That partnership has been there between MATAN and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. However, what has now happened is that they have now come up with a new system whereby FIRS can track the turnover and sales of those market traders, and then be able to at least, decide or determine what taxes will be deducted from that and what they have to pay. It's not 100%, they're not going to actually collect everything at the time. And just like you rightly said, yes, there are exemptions, for certain areas like medical services, books, etc., fertilizers, and so on, in the VAT Act, and of course the 25 million naira turnover. So even with the 40 million members of MATAN nationwide, if they can even scratch the surface and be 10% effective in 2023, and then improve and grow and collect more over time as more and more traders become aware and appreciate the fact that they have to pay these taxes so that certain services are rendered to them and to the community at large, then this will actually grow over the years. And so that's what the government is trying to achieve at this time. And so MATAN is just one partnership. They're going to explore others. And like I said, once the government settles in properly and various roles and functions are clearly defined across the nation, it will make things a lot easier and move faster towards achieving this objective.
Just quickly, before we let you go, what will be your expectations of and advice to the Tax Reforms Committee set up by the President, for which he has appointed Taiwo Oyedele, whom I'm sure that you will know very well, a very brilliant tax expert, as the chair? What will be your expectations of that committee, and what will be your words of advice to them, given that maybe the terms of reference might even be short, because, of course, the cabinet will soon be formed, and then everybody will settle into the larger picture of what this government represents?
Yes, what I will actually expect from them at this point in time before the cabinet is formed is to actually come up with a very, very simple, clear, and concise, or a streamlined, policy, so that more people will understand their responsibility. Part of the problem we have, especially both individuals as well as small businesses, is not particularly knowing not only the tax laws, but even their responsibility as citizens towards paying taxes. People try as much as possible to either evade taxes or to, falsify their records. But if the committee can, clearly, in simple terms, just let people know, bullet points, this is what is expected, this is the objective, it is not punitive, it's actually, for the good of everybody. I think it will go a long way in increasing that tax collection net that we so badly need at the moment, given that I don't even think up to 15-20% of those who are supposed to be paying taxes are paying taxes, especially in the informal sector. And so, once they understand that, I think, that will be the first step. And then they can now go into the broader areas of developing the new tax policy as tax experts.
Well, all right. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us on the morning show this morning.